Today, we're gonna be talking about the mirror strategy. I think I talked about this in my previous video where if it's comfortable for you, it might be comfortable for the opponent. It doesn't have complete relevance to that, but we're gonna talk about that today. It's actually one of my favorite topics to talk about because no one ever talks about this. It's also one of the most difficult things to do, but we'll talk about why. What is mirror tactics? What is a mirror? It's just basically a reflection of you, right? It's doing the exact same thing that you're doing. In tennis, there's your style of play where you hit a lot of topspin, or you could be a flat player and you could hit a lot flat. There's not one style that is really, really great. Nadal, yes, there's a lot of spin, that's great, but again, he lost to Djokovic more times, so you can't really say which one is better. And Federer also beats Nadal, but again, I do prefer actually more topspin than a flat player for singles. But the thing is, topspin has to have a plow-through effect too. It has to go up. When it hits the ground, it hits to go up and not go down. That's another topic for another video, but I do prefer more topspin in singles than flat players, but you need to do both. And I'm gonna explain why in this explanation. Man, my mind is just like going all crazy because there's so many things to talk about. There's so many things to talk about because I'll just do one. Spin rate. Okay, spin rate and height. So when I say height, it's the height of the ball path. Basically, the net's here. This is more flatter and this is more topspin and it has more height. It has to do with spin rate because if you hit flat and high, it's gonna go out and you're gonna hit the fence. And if you hit too much topspin going flat this way, it's gonna go short or go into the net. Oh man, I get too excited when I do this. So spin rate is number one. Number two is positioning. Now, a lot of the tactics that I'm gonna teach you are more for singles rather than doubles. I'm not a double specialist. I'm more of a singles specialist and singles specialist coach. So I'm gonna be just talking about that. The spin is first, but it has, it's very closely related to the positioning of where you're gonna be. Imagine that you're playing someone who hits a lot of spin rate, a lot of topspin, but you're a flat player. Okay, is it easy to hit that heavy topspin back with your flat shots? Just complete flat. I can't say completely, but it is very, very difficult for you to completely play at your style of play and hit flat. And you have to match your spin rate along with your opponent. And number three is how to break. This is very important actually. This is one of the most important things. How to break or have them mirror you. So important. One of the most important strategies in tennis actually. That's number three. And oppositely, let's say your opponent is a very, very flat player and you're a very, very heavy topspin player. When they hit very, very flat and the ball is skidding off the ground, it is very, very difficult for you to hit heavy topspin. Isn't that weird? It goes the same way, but either you hit flat or the opponent. So whatever the opponent is doing, you have to be able to match the spin rate and the depth of it too. Because the reason why, I'm gonna take example of Nadal and Federer. Federer plays very, very close to the baseline, right? Nadal plays more behind the baseline, right? Federer is probably the best at it. Agassi was really good at taking the ball on the rise, but that was before Federer. When Federer was at his prime, he was taking balls on the rise. He was playing more aggressive. So he would just basically stand on top of the baseline and hit balls on the rise. But the thing is, the reason why Nadal was his kryptonite is because when he hits high and heavy topspin to Federer's backhand, forehand too, actually. It doesn't matter actually where he hits it, but if he hits it deep enough and it's very heavy, he's gonna have a very tough time hitting that on the rise and attacking it right away and hitting winners or taking control of that point. So why does he do it? He has to play at his best level to be able to beat Nadal, but it's not a very good tactic for normal players. For Federer, he's a specialist, he's the best in the world at it, but he did lose more to Nadal, so it's not the best strategy, but it's like the only strategy that would work against Nadal of what he had, what he was capable of, because he couldn't beat Nadal with the spin rate. So he had to find some kind of way to beat him, but he tried to beat Nadal with his best weapon and best strategy and best thing that he did, but it still is not the best strategy in the world to beat Nadal. Some of you, like beginners, intermediate players, might have a tough time understanding what I'm trying to say, but when you hit heavy topspin, simply put, if you hit heavy topspin deep, whoever you're playing that is on the rise player, like attacker, that is staying on top of the baseline, you're gonna have more success if you are the topspin player. What mirror strategy is, if you are the player that's hitting flat, you have to be able to somewhat, because you're not playing Nadal, you probably would be able to match some of the spin rate that your opponent is hitting. So what you would have to do is mirror the positioning, okay, and go back and hit topspin with the other player, okay? Because if you try to hit too flat on a heavy ball on the rise, you would miss the ball way too many times, and it's very, very risky for you to do that. So that's what mirror tactic is. You are copying the movements of you don't have to be necessarily better than them, but you do need to be able to copy the spin rate of the player, or at least be able to get them back, or hit flat as well if they're hitting flat. Again, like if the ball is skidding off the ground, it's very hard to pick that up and hit heavy. If the ball is kicking up very fast, it's very hard to time that and hit very, very flat. That's why you have to take account the spin rate and the positioning as well. Spin rate, I kind of explained, but I really didn't explain the positioning. So I'm gonna explain the positioning. When you're playing singles, positioning can be right here on top of the baseline, which Federer does, more neutral, maybe 3-4 feet behind the baseline. So you go back and forth, but there's also way behind the baseline like Hyun Chang or Nadal. A lot of next gen players play very, very far back. So this would be Federer, okay? This would be Djokovic. This would be Nadal, okay? So what Federer does, he does very well moving forward, right? Now, he's always looking to go forward. Nadal is always on the move going back more, okay? And he's always like in this area. Now, the reason why I feel like Djokovic was the best player in the world, even when Federer and Nadal was doing so well, is also, I mean, this is another topic for another video, but the reason why he's one of the best players that I thought was he can do both. He could go forward and he could go back, so he could move in all directions. Yes, I know Federer could do that, I know Nadal could do that, but if you watch them closely, most of their strategy and tactics involve going forward for Federer. Most of the Nadal at the end of his career, because he couldn't move as well as he did when he was younger, he was trying to attack more because he was getting slower, getting injured more, and the court coverage wasn't as great as when he was 16 and 17. So that's why he was moving forward. And he had to find a way to win other than just scrambling for balls and hitting heavy, high and heavy. So I explained what you would have to do if somebody hits heavy topspin and you're moving back like this. You have to be able to move back and hit the topspin and be a little bit more patient. So let's say you are this player, okay, and you're playing someone who hits heavy topspin. What should you do? Not just move back, but what should you do? What you should be doing also is, instead of having them hit from here, you should have them try to come up and play more here, where they're not very comfortable. So basically you're trying to get them off of their comfort zone, but this is one of the most difficult tactics, is because you have to be able to go back as well and not just stay on top of the baseline. So what I'm trying to say is you have to be very balanced player when you want to be a great singles player. You have to be able to adapt to different situations, and not one style of play works the best. Let's say, for example, Andre Agassi in the 90s. Agassi was doing so well and it was very flashy, so everybody was copying his style where, you know, you're right on top of the baseline, taking everything on the rise, attacking everything. But the thing is, he was so good at that. Like Andre Agassi was so good at that. That's why he was able to win so many matches with that one specific style. But the thing is, what I found out is I'm not Andre Agassi. You know, I'm not Roger Federer. So what I'm trying to say is you have to find what you do best, but you have to, it works better if you're more of an all-around player. And let's say you're playing Andre Agassi, for example. Let's say if you're playing Andre Agassi, how are you gonna go against Andre Agassi if he's hitting on the rise super fast and early? You're trying to do the same thing. Are you gonna win? No, probably not. So I would use Nadal's strategy, trying to hit high and heavy, balls up at his feet, so it would be very, very hard, difficult for him to attack all the time. And I'm pressuring him all the time because he's trying to attack every one of them. And the timing can't be 100% every time, because if you're playing up very close to the baseline, your timing has to be perfect to be able to attack. Even if you're a little bit off, you're gonna give opportunities for me to move back forward and attack you. And if I do attack you and I hit deep, you would have to move back and you would be in trouble because you don't like that position. You know, singles game, like I said, is very chess-like. It's very, very fun when you know what you're doing. It's not just like, okay, hit the ball over into the court. You know, there's a lot of strategy involved when you do get to that level of being able to hit high and heavy, being able to hit somewhat flat, being able to attack, and being able to go forward or move back. Having a different strategy and tactics is very, very helpful, and don't be so single-minded. Yes, when you're working on something, okay, like for the next month, I'm only gonna play on top of the baseline because I wanna work on that and get better. But the thing is, like, generally, when you do get pretty good at that, you don't wanna use that strategy all the time because it's not always the best strategy to break down your opponent or adapt to your opponent. Did that make sense?
Yeah, you can only use your strategy if you're a versatile player.
Yes, that's why it's one of the most difficult strategies, because it doesn't stick to one tactic or strategy. And that's also one of the reasons why I thought Djokovic was the best player, because when you watch Federer, you know what he's gonna do. You know what he's gonna do. You know what he likes to do. When you watch Nadal, you know what he likes to do. You know what's coming. It's just that it's so good that it's difficult to defend against that. But when you watch Djokovic, and I think Nadal recently talked about this, Federer is so good at what he does, you know what's coming. But when you play Djokovic, you have no idea where he's gonna hit the ball. You don't know if he's gonna play heavy topspin today or, you know, flatter today, or it depends on what he's feeling and what I'm doing to him. So basically, he could go forward or backwards. It could be a dogfight, or he could start attacking if he feels like, oh, I have an opportunity to attack and the opponent is not feeling very great and the ball is not heavy enough or fast enough or hard enough. So it's very difficult to play Djokovic. The reason also why I know this is because when you're watching as a coach of a top player, you're always trying to figure out how to beat that next player that my player is playing, or you're strategizing and studying different players. Okay, like what are they good at? What are their patterns? What are they not good at? What do they feel comfortable with and not comfortable with? So when I'm trying to find strategies for my player like Hyun Chung and he's playing Federer, I'm telling him tips on what Federer's like to do and what type of attack he's gonna do. So Chung would be prepared against that. And that's how you practice as well. And then again, same thing, Nadal, when he played Nadal, the ball's gonna be up high on a clay court. But the thing is, Hyun Chung, he loved the balls up high here. So I was like, you're not gonna have too much problem, because if the ball kicks up, that's your shot. You're good at that. But when I was trying to find strategies for Djokovic, there really isn't a great strategy against Djokovic. And this is a good example, because when Hyun Chung played Djokovic, what did everybody say who watched that match? All the commentators, all the pros, coaches, they said, he's a mini Djokovic. He said, oh, he's basically the next generation of Djokovic, because he played exactly like Djokovic. Djokovic wasn't at his best, but the thing is, Chung was able to play good enough where he played the same style as Djokovic, but was better actually. That's where, you know, this mirror tactic kind of came up, because I was trying to find ways to break down opponents, not only when I was playing, but when I was coaching these top players and top juniors.
So even if you're not great at everything, as long as you know how to do everything, you can utilize it in your strategy, right? So
I wouldn't say that, because that's kind of like saying I'm kind of okay at everything,
Yeah.
which means that you don't really have a weapon. Each of the things that you do should be a weapon up until a certain point. Like kind of like, you know, when I said the strategy would be just put the ball in and play and don't worry about, you know, what your strategy is or what type of shot you're working on, just get everything in. You have to develop weapons and get good in a particular style, and then you branch off. So you can't be like, today I'm gonna work on moving back and hitting high and heavy when you're not even good at attacking. Or when you're not even good at hitting high and heavy, you're like, okay, today I'm just gonna work on just, you know, hitting on the rise, attacking shots. You gotta have a certain style of play and you develop other style of play as you go. It's a very, very advanced strategy. And it's also in my book, it's The Art of War, Art of Tennis. It's a very difficult way of, no, but the thing is, when you're playing at your level, you're not gonna see Djokovic, you're not gonna see Federer or Nadal. You're most likely going to see someone a little bit better than you or a little bit less level than you. So you can try to do the mirror tactics. It's just that you do need to focus more and you do have to feel comfortable in your B or C game rather than just your A game. It's okay to initiate that first instead of not knowingly going with the flow of the game, playing into someone's strength. It's actually better if you knowingly, okay, since he likes to hit high and heavy, I'm gonna go back and hit high and heavy too. It's okay to do that. People are like, oh no, you gotta play your own game. But the thing is, like, it's okay to kind of mirror this style of play and then implement your strategy on top of that. So instead of doing the A game first, you're actually doing the B game first and then implementing the A strategy as you go, as the strategy and the game pans out. Knowing that, I think people would say then you're always following your opponent, then that's not good. So I think the question would be then, who sets the tone? My opponent keeps hitting flat and I'm a heavy topspinner. Who sets the tone then? This is why it's so important to have a great serve. The first ball after the serve is so important because it sets the tone of that. In some of my videos, I don't know if I did that in Korean or English, I can't remember, but the number 3 is how to break that or how to start it is by, let's say you are the server and there's the returner, right? Now, when you serve, your serve has to be good enough to be able to attack and get him off balance on the serve. Now, if you get him off balance on the serve, the return is not going to be that great. So most of the time, returners will return the ball in this center area. This is a big target. That's where you should be aiming to, actually. So this is where you return the ball. After you serve, that third strike, first strike is the serve, return is the second strike. The third strike is so very important because that sets the tone of the point. You can try to go with heavy topspin and set the tone of that point with the heavy topspin. And if he is trying to, okay, I'm a baseliner, so I'm gonna go here and try to attack, but you hit super high and heavy here, and he's gonna try to attack that, he's gonna probably miss it into the net or give you a short ball and you could attack that one. Very, very important to set the tone on that third shot. That third strike has to be worked on. It's probably the most under-practiced shot in tennis next to the serve. You know, it's so funny because serve is the most important shot in tennis and then the third shot is the most important shot after that, but people never work on it. It's so funny. When I'm taking in players, that third strike is so important and it sets the tone of the whole point. So it's very, very important. Obviously, to go against that, if you're the returner, you have to find a way to break out of that. So that was the heavy topspin way. And let's say he hit heavy topspin here, you have to try to haul your ass and try to hit heavy topspin back or attack it and break out of that. There's different strategies, but mirroring works very well. And then another example would be, so now you're a flat player, let's say. You hit the first serve really big, and then this returner hits the ball down the middle, and you hit the ball very, very flat, you know, wherever you're gonna hit it. This guy is gonna have so much trouble if he tries to hit that one flat. Or sorry, with spin, like high and heavy, because when the ball is skidding off the ground, it's very hard to pick that up and go a complete different spin rate, okay? So basically, you have to find a way to hit that flat back, okay? somehow. That's what the mirror strategy is about. The mirror tactics is important, but what I'm really trying to say is that third strike is the most important after the serve, because that sets the tone for the whole point. Obviously, there's more to that, but the thing is, it's one of the most important things to be able to play your style, because you don't want to follow what your opponent is doing. Just because the mirror tactic works, that doesn't mean just do mirror tactics. It means that on that fourth strike, you have to somewhat match your opponent to be able to neutralize your opponent, or kind of go with the flow and then play your style or attack or go back and hit heavy. You have to wait for the right ball to change that pace into whatever your style of play is. So for example, like on the fifth strike or the sixth strike, the ball kind of slows down and you're able to go from all flat rally to change it up to a high and heavy rally, and they would kind of freak out because the whole 6-ball rally was flat, and then you change it up and hit heavy topspin. You have to kind of change your mindset and go into a different mode and go back and hit heavy as well. Or there's so many variables in tennis. Like, I'm trying to talk about very different things, but at the higher level, like let's say, I think people would ask, okay, I tried to hit heavy, but they attacked and the point was over, which means that your shot didn't do anything. Your topspin rate is not bothering your opponent. So going back to the strategy that I talked about, consistency is number 1, power is number 2, and then placement is number 3. Then you ask the question, I'm hitting heavy topspin, that's my limit, but they're just hitting ripping winners. It means that the power isn't enough. You might have to go even past your power level. Maybe he even hit it bigger. I'm just saying, like, the comfort level wise, not literally power wise, but you have to kind of go out of your comfort level zone of that power and go out of that and hit even more topspin to make the guy feel pressure, because whatever you're doing, he's not feeling the pressure and he's just like, this is nothing. That's not an issue with the strategy, but that's an issue with how well you could execute on your shot. I know today's video was very long and kind of all over the place, but again, that's how kind of tennis is. There's no systematic way of learning tennis. That's one of the reasons why it's very, very difficult to get better, and it's very difficult at the top level and advanced level. Not only that, beginner, intermediate, it's all very difficult because there's so many random shots in beginner level and intermediate. It's actually quite easier in the advanced level strategy-wise if you know how to hit the shots and execute the shots. So it's very different. When you're first starting out, beginner, intermediate, the strategy aspect is very, very difficult because you're not very good at pinpointing your shots and you don't know what shot to hit. In the later advanced levels, the execution is actually the harder part. It's a very different mindset because a lot of people think like, oh, it's all strategy, all mental in the advanced level, but it's actually the execution is more important, because if you don't know how to hit a certain shot, it's a weakness. And that's why it's more like a chess, and you need to have a lot of pieces that you could work with to implement these strategies. But yeah, I mean, tennis is so much fun at all levels, but when you get to that top level, it gets very, very fun. And when you're working with your player, you have to find out which pieces he would need to implement a certain strategy to be able to take down a certain opponent. So it gets really fun, and it's a puzzle. It's always a problem-solving thing, and you're always trying to adapt in tennis. So if you like that stuff, tennis is great, and I hope a lot of people this video can get to that level. That's why I'm trying to help you guys out to get to that level with my technique videos, strategy videos, and tactic videos.
Do you think not as many coaches are talking about your strategy because it's more for advanced players? There's like less advanced players than intermediate level players.
They don't talk about it because you're saying there's more beginner level players than advanced level players. Probably, yes. Probably. In order for you to kind of know that, you have to play actually. Like you have to be at a certain level where you've experienced that, where like, oh, somebody hits heavy topspin, but I'm a flat hitter, but I'm having trouble hitting that back. Or vice versa, you're a heavy topspinner, but the opponent hits so flat, it's very hard to generate a heavy topspin. You have to kind of have that experience, but not only have that experience, you'd have to know and coach at that higher level to be able to really explain to your player what's happening or what's going on. Yeah, tennis is very, it seems very difficult, but once you kind of find a couple of answers, and it's really not that difficult. You just have to have a very open mind. Again, this video isn't for everybody, and it's not really just to show off my knowledge and experience in tennis, but it's a very important thing, and a lot of people miss this. So it would really help you out if you kind of think about how important that third strike is. And when people say you gotta attack, they're really talking about that third ball, because that third strike sets the tone of the whole point. I hope this video helped you out. If you have any questions, please write them in the comments and I'll try to explain as best as I can. And I love the comments where you're like, oh, like, you know, that makes perfect sense. I don't know if I made perfect sense today, but if I need to clear things up, I'll try to do it again in the next video. If you could leave a comment, that would be great. And don't forget to like and subscribe the video. Thanks.